In 1908, a young magazine reporter walked into the office of the richest man in the world. His name was Andrew Carnegie, the Steel Titan, the man who built an empire so massive that when he finally sold it, the price tag was $480 million. In today's money, that's nearly $14 billion. Carnegie was 73 years old. He had done everything a man could do with money. He had built libraries across America. He had funded universities. He had changed the face of an entire nation. But there was one thing that still bothered him. He believed he had discovered a secret, a formula, a pattern that every single wealthy person in history had followed, whether they knew it or not, and he was terrified that this secret would die with him. So when this young 25-year-old reporter named Napoleon Hill sat across from him, Carnegie made him an offer that would change the course of history. He said, "I want you to spend the next 20 years of your life interviewing the most successful people in America. I want you to study them. I want you to find the common thread. And then I want you to write it all down in a book so that any ordinary person can follow the same formula and become rich. 20 years, no salary, no funding, no guarantee." And Carnegie gave Hill just 60 seconds to answer. Hill later said that Carnegie had a stopwatch hidden under his desk. If Hill had taken 61 seconds, Carnegie would have moved on to someone else. But Hill didn't hesitate. He said yes. And for the next 2 decades, Napoleon Hill did exactly what Carnegie asked. He interviewed over 500 of the most successful people in America. Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, Theodore Roosevelt, John D. Rockefeller. The biggest names of the 20th century sat down with this man and revealed how they built their empires. The result was a book called Think and Grow Rich. Published in 1937, right in the middle of the Great Depression, when millions of Americans were broke, hungry, and hopeless. And yet this book told them something radical, something that went against everything they were experiencing. It said, "Your poverty starts in your mind, and so does your wealth." Since then, this book has sold over 100 million copies worldwide. More millionaires and billionaires have credited this single book for their success than any other book in history. But here's what most people get wrong about this book. They think it's just about positive thinking. Just believe you'll be rich and money will magically show up. That's not what this book says at all. What Napoleon Hill discovered after 20 years of research was a precise 13-step formula, 13 specific principles that every single wealthy person followed. Miss even one of them, and the whole system breaks down. Today, I'm going to walk you through every single one of those 13 principles in detail, not the watered-down version you see in 5-minute videos, the real thing. The complete breakdown. By the end of this summary, you'll understand exactly how the wealthiest people in history programmed their minds for success, and how you can do the same thing starting today. This is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Let's begin. Before we dive into the 13 principles that created more millionaires than any other book in history, if you're someone who wants to build real wealth and master your money mindset, hit that subscribe button right now. We break down the world's best books on money, business, and mindset so you don't have to spend hours reading them. Hit the like button. It takes 1 second and it helps this video reach more people who need to hear this. And if you want to read the full book yourself, I've put the link to Think and Grow Rich right in the description below. Trust me, this is the kind of book you want on your shelf for the rest of your life. Now let's get into the 13 principles that changed everything. Chapter 1. Desire, the starting point of all achievement. The first principle is desire, and Napoleon Hill is very clear. He's not talking about a wish. He's not talking about a hope. He's not talking about something that would be nice to have. He's talking about a burning, obsessive, all-consuming desire that takes over your entire life. Hill says most people go through life saying things like, "I wish I had more money. I hope I get that promotion. It would be nice to be rich someday." And he says that is exactly why most people stay broke. Because wishes don't build wealth. Burning desire does. And he tells a story that perfectly explains the difference. A long time ago, a great warrior faced a situation where he had to make a decision that would ensure victory for his army. He loaded his soldiers onto boats and sailed to the enemy's shore. Once every soldier had stepped onto the land, the warrior gave an order that shocked everyone. Burn the boats. His own men looked at him like he was insane. Those were their only way home. If they lost this battle, there was no escape, no retreat, no plan B. And that was exactly the point. The warrior turned to his soldiers and said, "You see those boats burning? That means we either win this battle or we die here. There is no going back." They won. Hill says that is the level of desire you need to build wealth. You have to burn your boats. You have to eliminate every possibility of retreat. You have to reach the point where success is the only option because you've cut off every other path. But desire alone isn't enough. Hill says you need to turn that desire into something specific, something measurable, something real. And he gives you 6 precise steps to do it. Step 1. Fix in your mind the exact amount of money you want. Not just a lot of money or enough to be comfortable. An exact number. Write it down. Step 2. Determine exactly what you are willing to give in return for that money. Hill says the universe doesn't hand out free money. There is always a price. You need to decide what service, what value, what effort you're willing to exchange. Step 3. Establish a definite date by which you intend to have that money. Not someday, not eventually. A specific date on the calendar. Wanna a specific date on the calendar. Step 4. Create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once. Hill emphasizes those last 3 words. Begin at once, not next Monday, not after the holidays, right now. Even if your plan isn't perfect, even if you don't feel ready, start immediately. Step 5. Write out a clear, concise statement of everything from steps 1 through 4. The amount, what you'll give, the deadline, the plan. Step 6. Read that written statement out loud twice every single day. Once when you wake up in the morning, once before you go to bed at night. And as you read it, Hill says you must see yourself already in possession of the money. You must feel it. You must believe it is already yours. Now, most people hear this and laugh. They think it sounds ridiculous. Reading a statement out loud every morning, visualizing money, that sounds like a fairy tale, but here's what Hill understood that most people don't. This process rewires your subconscious mind. When you repeat something with emotion and conviction every single day, your brain starts to accept it as reality. And once your subconscious believes something is true, it starts working 24 hours a day to make it happen. It starts noticing opportunities you would have missed before. It starts pushing you toward actions you would have avoided before. It starts attracting the right people and the right circumstances. Hill says every single wealthy person he interviewed over those 20 years had done some version of this process. Every one of them had a specific number in mind. Every one of them had a burning desire that refused to die. Every one of them had eliminated the option of failure from their thinking. The first principle is desire, not a wish, not a hope. A burning, obsessive, boat-burning desire with a specific number, a specific plan, and a specific deadline. That is where all wealth begins. Chapter 2. Faith. Visualizing and believing in the attainment of desire. The second principle is faith. And this is where most people completely misunderstand what Napoleon Hill is saying. He's not talking about religious faith. He's not talking about blind hope. He's not talking about sitting on your couch and believing a check will magically appear in your mailbox. Hill defines faith as a state of mind which may be induced by repeated instructions to the subconscious mind. In simple words, faith is something you create. You build it. You program it into yourself through repetition. And he says faith is the only known antidote for failure. Here's why this matters. Hill says every human being has 2 parts of their mind. The conscious mind, which is the part you think with during the day, and the subconscious mind, which is the powerful engine running in the background that controls your habits, your beliefs, your emotions, and ultimately your actions. The problem is that most people have programmed their subconscious mind with failure. Since childhood, they've heard things like, money is hard to make, rich people are greedy, you'll never amount to anything. People like us don't get rich. Be realistic. And after hearing these things thousands of times from parents, teachers, friends, and society, the subconscious mind accepts them as truth. It doesn't question them, it doesn't argue, it just absorbs them and starts running your life based on those beliefs. So when you consciously say, I want to be rich, your subconscious immediately fires back. No, you don't. You can't. That's not for people like you. And because the subconscious is infinitely more powerful than the conscious mind, it wins every single time. Hill says this is why most people stay poor, not because they lack talent, not because they lack opportunity, but because their subconscious mind has been poisoned with beliefs about money that sabotage every move they make, and faith is the cure. Hill says you can reprogram your subconscious mind by feeding it new instructions, deliberately, consistently, emotionally, every single day. This is why the 6 steps from the desire chapter are so important. When you read your written statement out loud every morning and every night, with emotion, with conviction, with feeling, you are slowly overwriting the old programming. You are replacing I can't with I will. You are replacing money is hard with money flows to me because I provide value. Hill tells the story of a man who understood this better than almost anyone, Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi had no money, no army, no political power, no weapons. He had nothing that the world would consider powerful. And yet he influenced 300 million people and brought the British Empire to its knees. How? Hill says Gandhi accomplished this because he had absolute faith in his vision. He didn't hope India would be free. He didn't wish for independence. He knew it with every fiber of his being, and that unshakable conviction was so powerful that it transferred to millions of other people. They believed because he believed. They had faith because his faith was contagious. Hill says wealth works the same way. When you develop absolute faith that you will achieve your financial goal, your entire energy changes. The way you walk changes. The way you talk changes. The way you make decisions changes. People start responding to you differently. Opportunities start appearing that weren't there before. But here's the part most people miss. Hill warns that faith works both ways. If you have faith that you will succeed, your subconscious will move mountains to make it happen. But if you have faith that you will fail, if deep down you truly believe you're not good enough or that wealth isn't meant for you, your subconscious will make that come true instead. He calls this the principle of autosuggestion, which is the next chapter. But the foundation is here in faith. Hill says there is a formula. He calls it the self-confidence formula. 5 simple statements you read to yourself every day. First, I know that I have the ability to achieve my definite purpose in life. Therefore, I demand persistent, continuous action toward achieving it, and I promise to take that action right now. Second, I realize that the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outward physical action. Therefore, I will concentrate my thoughts for 30 minutes daily on thinking of the person I intend to become. Third, I know that through the principle of autosuggestion, any desire I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression through practical means. Therefore, I will devote 10 minutes daily to demanding of myself the development of self-confidence. Fourth, I have clearly written down a description of my definite purpose in life, and I will never stop trying until I have developed sufficient self-confidence for its attainment. Fifth, I fully realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless it is built upon truth and justice. Therefore, I will engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. Hill says the wealthy people he studied weren't born with unshakable confidence. They built it, they programmed it. They read statements like these until their subconscious mind had no choice but to accept them as truth. The second principle is faith, not hope, not wishing. A deliberately constructed belief system that you build through daily repetition until your subconscious mind accepts wealth as your inevitable destination. Chapter 3, Autosuggestion, the medium for influencing the subconscious mind. The third principle is autosuggestion, and this is the bridge between what you consciously want and what your subconscious mind actually believes. Hill says autosuggestion is a term that applies to all suggestions and all self-administered stimuli which reach the mind through the 5 senses. In simple words, Autosuggestion is anything you repeatedly tell yourself or expose yourself to that eventually sinks into your subconscious mind and becomes a belief. And here's the scary part. It's happening to you right now, whether you realize it or not. Every time you scroll through social media and see people living lavish lifestyles, your subconscious is absorbing a message. Every time you complain to your friends about how expensive everything is, your subconscious is absorbing a message. Every time you say, "I can't afford that," your subconscious records it as a fact. Hill says most people are using autosuggestion against themselves every single day. They are programming poverty into their own minds without even knowing it. But the wealthy people Hill studied did the opposite. They used autosuggestion deliberately, intentionally, strategically. They chose exactly what messages they fed to their subconscious mind. And Hill gives a very specific method for doing this. Remember those 6 steps from the Desire chapter? The written statement with the exact amount of money, the deadline, the plan, and what you'll give in return? Hill says autosuggestion is how you make that statement come alive. Most people will read that statement like they're reading a grocery list, flat, emotionless, mechanical. And Hill says if you do that, nothing will happen. Your subconscious mind will ignore it completely. It will treat it like background noise. The secret is emotion. Hill says your subconscious mind only responds to thoughts that are mixed with strong emotion. It doesn't care about logic, it doesn't care about facts, it only cares about feelings. If you read your statement with intense feeling, if you actually see the money in your hands, if you feel the weight of it, if you experience the joy and the freedom and the security it brings, then your subconscious mind will grab onto that image and start working to make it real. He gives a powerful example. Imagine 2 people reading the same statement. The first person reads it in a bored, monotone voice while checking their phone. "I intend to have $500,000 by December 31st. Then they put the paper down and go back to scrolling. The second person closes their eyes, takes a deep breath, reads the same words, but this time they see themselves holding the check. They feel the paper between their fingers. They see the number written on it. They feel their heart racing with excitement. They see themselves walking into the bank. They feel the relief of knowing their family is taken care of. Their hands are shaking because the emotion is so real." Hill says person number 1 will see 0 results. Person number 2 will start seeing their entire life shift. Same words, same statement, completely different outcomes. The only difference was emotion. And Hill warns people, this will feel stupid at first. You will feel ridiculous standing in your bedroom reading a piece of paper out loud with emotion. Your logical mind will tell you this is nonsense. Your friends would laugh at you if they saw you doing it. Do it anyway. Hill says the logical mind is the gatekeeper that keeps most people poor. It rejects anything it can't immediately explain. But the subconscious mind doesn't work on logic. It works on repetition and emotion. And if you bypass the logical mind long enough, with enough repetition and enough feeling, the subconscious will accept the new belief as truth. He compares it to planting a seed. You don't plant a seed in the ground and then dig it up every 5 minutes to see if it's growing. You plant it, you water it, you trust the process. And one day, sometimes weeks or months later, you see the first green shoot break through the soil. Autosuggestion works the same way. You plant the thought, you water it with emotion and repetition. You trust the process. And one day, sometimes weeks or months later, you start seeing real changes in your behavior, your decisions, your confidence, and your results. Hill says there are 3 specific rules for making autosuggestion work. Rule 1. Go to a quiet place where you will not be disturbed. Close your eyes, read your written statement out loud. Do this twice daily, morning and night, no exceptions, no skipped days. Rule 2. As you read the words, see yourself already in possession of the money. Don't see it as something in the future. See it as something that is happening right now. Your subconscious mind does not understand the difference between past, present, and future. It only understands what you present to it as real in this moment. Rule 3. Keep doing this until you can literally feel the money in your hands. Hill says the moment you reach the point where your visualization is so vivid that it feels physically real, that is the moment your subconscious mind has accepted the instruction. And from that point forward, it will work day and night to bring it into your physical reality. Hill says most people quit before they reach this point. They try it for 3 days, feel nothing, and decide it doesn't work. The people who became millionaires using this method did it for months. Some did it for years. They didn't stop because they trusted the process. The third principle is autosuggestion. It is the deliberate practice of feeding your subconscious mind a specific thought mixed with powerful emotion through daily repetition until your mind has no choice but to accept it as reality and start working to make it happen. Your thoughts become your beliefs become your actions become your wealth. That is the power of autosuggestion. Chapter 4, Specialized Knowledge. Personal experiences or observations. The fourth principle is specialized knowledge. And this is where Napoleon Hill completely destroys one of the biggest lies most people have been told their entire lives. The lie is this: knowledge is power. Hill says that's wrong. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is only potential power. It becomes power only when it is organized into definite plans of action and directed toward a definite end. Think about that for a second. There are millions of people walking around with college degrees, master's degrees, even PhDs, who are flat broke. They have enormous amounts of knowledge stored in their heads. But that knowledge hasn't made them wealthy because they never learned how to organize it and apply it toward making money. Hill says there are two types of knowledge: general knowledge and specialized knowledge. General knowledge is what most schools teach you. A little bit of history, a little bit of science, a little bit of math, a little bit of literature. You learn a tiny amount about 100 different subjects, but you never go deep on anything. Hill says general knowledge is practically useless when it comes to building wealth. No matter how much of it you have, it won't make you rich. Specialized knowledge is the opposite. It is deep, focused expertise in one specific area that the marketplace values and is willing to pay for. And Hill tells a story that proves this perfectly. Henry Ford, one of the richest men in America, was once publicly called an ignorant man by a newspaper. They mocked his lack of formal education. They said he was uneducated and unintelligent. Ford was so angry that he sued the newspaper for libel. During the trial, the newspaper's lawyers tried to prove their point by asking Ford a series of general knowledge questions. They asked him about history, about science, about all sorts of random facts. Ford couldn't answer most of them, and the lawyers thought they were winning. But then Ford leaned forward and said something that silenced the entire courtroom. He said, "If I really needed the answer to any of those questions, I could press a button on my desk and within 5 minutes, one of my team members would bring me the answer. Now tell me, why would I waste space in my brain memorizing useless information when I can focus every ounce of my energy on the things that actually make my business grow?" The courtroom went quiet. Hill says Ford understood something that the so-called educated people didn't. You don't need to know everything. You need to know the right things. And for everything else, you surround yourself with people who have the specialized knowledge you lack. This is one of the most powerful wealth-building secrets Hill discovered. The richest people in America were not the most educated in the traditional sense. They were the most specialized. They picked one lane and went deeper than anyone else. And when they needed knowledge outside their lane, they hired experts or formed alliances. But Hill also says something that most people completely overlook. The accumulation of specialized knowledge never stops. He says most people make the mistake of thinking that education ends when you leave school. They get their diploma, they get their first job, and they stop learning. They coast on what they already know for the rest of their careers. Hill says that is financial suicide. The world is constantly changing. Industries evolve, markets shift, technology advances. The specialized knowledge that made you valuable 5 years ago might be completely worthless today. The wealthy people Hill studied were obsessed with continuous learning. They read constantly, they studied their industries, they attended courses and seminars, they sought out mentors, they never stopped sharpening their specialized knowledge. And Hill makes another critical point. You don't necessarily need to be the one who has the specialized knowledge. You just need to know how to organize it and direct it. He uses the example of Andrew Carnegie himself. Carnegie didn't know how to make steel. He didn't understand the chemistry or the engineering behind it, but he knew how to assemble a team of people who did. He knew how to organize their specialized knowledge and direct it toward a profitable outcome. Hill says this is what separates the wealthy from the poor. Poor people try to do everything themselves. They try to learn everything. They spread themselves thin across 100 different skills and never master anything. Wealthy people identify what they're best at, go deep on that one thing, and then build a team around them to cover everything else. Hill also points out where to find specialized knowledge. He lists several sources: your own experience and education, the experience and education of others through a mastermind alliance, colleges and universities, public libraries, and specialized training courses. But he emphasizes one thing above all: the knowledge must be practical. It must be applicable. It must be something you can use to provide value to the marketplace. If it doesn't lead to a definite plan for making money, it's just entertainment disguised as education. He tells the story of a man who never finished high school. This man had no formal education at all, but he identified a gap in the marketplace, a specific need that nobody was filling. He studied that one area obsessively. He learned everything there was to know about it. He became the undisputed expert, and within a few years he was earning more money than doctors and lawyers who had spent a decade in school. Hill says this happens more often than people realize. The person who goes deep on one valuable skill will almost always out-earn the person who goes wide on dozens of useless skills. The fourth principle is specialized knowledge, not general knowledge, not random information. Deep, focused, practical expertise in one specific area, constantly updated, constantly sharpened, and organized into a definite plan of action. Knowledge only becomes power when you know exactly how to use it to create value. Everything else is just trivia. Chapter 5: Imagination, the Workshop of the Mind. The fifth principle is imagination, and Napoleon Hill says this is the workshop where all plans are created and all fortunes are first built. He says the human mind has been given a power that separates it from every other living creature on Earth. It is the power to take invisible ideas from thin air and turn them into physical reality. Every skyscraper you've ever seen, every car you've ever driven, every phone you've ever held, every dollar bill you've ever spent, all of them started as nothing more than an invisible thought inside someone's imagination. Hill says most people have let this incredible power go to waste. They haven't used their imagination in years. It has become weak and lazy, like a muscle that hasn't been exercised. And Hill says that is one of the biggest reasons most people struggle financially. They can't imagine a better life. They can't see a way out. They can't picture themselves wealthy. And because they can't imagine it, they can never create it. But here's where it gets interesting. Hill says there are two forms of imagination, and understanding the difference between them is the key to building wealth. The first form is what he calls synthetic imagination. This is when you take existing ideas, existing concepts, existing plans, and rearrange them into new combinations. You don't create anything brand new. You simply take what already exists and put it together in a way that nobody has done before. Hill says most fortunes are built through synthetic imagination. You don't need to invent something from scratch. You just need to look at what's already working and find a smarter way to combine it, package it, deliver it, or improve it. Think about it. McDonald's didn't invent the hamburger. They took an existing product and created a system to deliver it faster, cheaper, and more consistently than anyone else. Uber didn't invent the taxi. They took an existing service and combined it with smartphone technology to make it more convenient. Netflix didn't invent movies. They took existing content and changed the delivery method. Every single one of those companies became worth billions of dollars, not because they invented something new, but because they used synthetic imagination to rearrange existing ideas into something more valuable. Hill says this is the type of imagination that most people should focus on. Stop trying to invent the next big thing. Instead, look around you. Look at what people are already buying. Look at what frustrates them. Look at what's inefficient, and then use your imagination to rearrange existing solutions into something better. The second form is what he calls creative imagination. This is the higher level. This is when completely new ideas come to you seemingly out of nowhere. Hill calls these hunches and inspirations. He says creative imagination is the direct connection between the human mind and infinite intelligence. Hill says creative imagination is what the greatest geniuses in history used. Edison used it when he invented the light bulb. The Wright brothers used it when they imagined humans flying through the sky. Einstein used it when he saw the relationship between energy and matter that nobody else could see. But Hill says creative imagination only works under very specific conditions. It only activates when the conscious mind is stimulated by a burning desire and is vibrating at an extremely high rate. In simple words, creative imagination doesn't show up when you're sitting on the couch watching television. It shows up when you're so obsessed with solving a problem that your mind is working on it every waking second. Hill tells a powerful story to illustrate this. There was a man named Asa Candler. He bought a kettle and a recipe from an old druggist for a tiny amount of money. The recipe was for a sweet syrup that nobody cared about. The old druggist saw no value in it. He just wanted to get rid of it. But Asa Candler saw something that the druggist couldn't see. He looked at that recipe and imagined something enormous. He imagined that syrup being sold in every store, every restaurant, every town across America. He imagined a brand that would become a household name. That syrup was Coca-Cola. The old druggist had the same recipe, the same product, the same opportunity. But he lacked imagination. He couldn't see what wasn't there yet. Asa Candler could. And that single difference in imagination was worth billions of dollars. Hill says this is what separates the wealthy from everyone else. They see what doesn't exist yet. They look at the world not as it is, but as it could be. They look at problems and see opportunities. They look at ordinary things and see extraordinary possibilities. And Hill gives practical advice on how to strengthen your imagination. He says imagination is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. The less you use it, the weaker it becomes. Most people stopped exercising their imagination when they were children. They were told to be realistic. They were told to stop daydreaming. They were told to focus on practical things. Hill says that advice created millions of practical, realistic, broke people. He says you need to start using your imagination again. Start asking yourself questions like, what if there was a better way to do this? What if I combined this idea with that idea? What if I could solve this problem that millions of people are struggling with? What would I build if I knew I couldn't fail? Hill says the moment you start asking these questions consistently, your imagination wakes up, ideas start flowing, connections start forming, plans start appearing that weren't there before. And here's the critical connection. Imagination is what transforms desire into money. Your desire gives you the fuel. Your faith gives you the belief. Your autosuggestion programs your subconscious. But it is your imagination that creates the actual plan, the vehicle that turns all of that mental energy into physical dollars. Without imagination, desire is just frustration. Faith is just daydreaming. Autosuggestion is just words. But when imagination enters the picture, everything changes. You can finally see the path. You can see the product. You can see the service. You can see the business. You can see exactly how you're going to turn your burning desire into real, tangible wealth. The fifth principle is imagination. It is the workshop of the mind where all plans for wealth are first created. Use synthetic imagination to rearrange existing ideas into profitable combinations. Develop creative imagination by staying obsessed with your definite purpose, and never let anyone tell you to stop dreaming, because your dreams are the blueprints of your future fortune. The people who changed the world were not the most realistic. They were the most imaginative. Chapter 6. Organized Planning, the Crystallization of Desire into Action. The sixth principle is organized planning, and Napoleon Hill says this is where most people fail. Not because they don't have desire, not because they don't have faith, not because they can't imagine a better life, but because they never sit down and create a concrete, organized, practical plan to actually get there. Hill says a desire without a plan is like a ship without a rudder. It drifts aimlessly on the ocean, pushed around by every wave and every wind, and eventually it sinks. And he starts this chapter with one of the most important statements in the entire book. He says, if your first plan does not work, replace it with a new plan. If that new plan doesn't work, replace it with yet another plan. Keep changing your plan until you find one that does work. Hill says this is where 99% of people give up. They create one plan, they try it It fails, and they conclude that their goal is impossible. They quit. They tell themselves they tried their best and it just wasn't meant to be. Hill says those people were not defeated by failure, they were defeated by their own lack of persistence in creating new plans. He says no one is ever defeated until they accept defeat as a permanent reality. Temporary defeat is not permanent failure. It is simply a signal that your plan was flawed and needs to be revised. And Hill tells a powerful story about this. He talks about a man during the gold rush era who went out to Colorado to mine for gold. This man started digging. He found a vein of gold and started pulling ore out of the ground. He was making money, things were going great, and then suddenly, the vein of gold disappeared. He kept digging, nothing. He dug deeper, still nothing. Finally, frustrated and exhausted, he quit. He sold his mining equipment to a junk dealer for a few $100s and went home. The junk dealer was smarter. Before he did anything, he hired a mining engineer, an expert with specialized knowledge, to examine the mine. The engineer studied the fault lines in the earth and calculated that the vein of gold would be found just 3 feet from where the first man had stopped digging. 3 feet. The junk dealer started digging exactly where the engineer told him to and immediately struck the gold vein. He went on to make millions of dollars from the same mine that the first man had abandoned. Hill says this story has been repeated millions of times throughout history in different forms. People quit 3 feet from gold because they didn't have an organized plan and they didn't seek specialized knowledge when their first plan failed. Now, Hill gets very specific about how to create an organized plan. He says the first thing you need is to form what he calls a mastermind alliance. This is a group of people who you need for the creation and carrying out of your plan. Nobody builds wealth alone. You need people with skills, knowledge, and connections that you don't have. Hill says when selecting your mastermind group, you must follow these rules. Rule 1. Ally yourself with people who share your vision and are willing to work toward the same goal. Half-hearted allies are worse than no allies at all. Rule 2. Decide what advantages and benefits you can offer each member of your group in return for their cooperation. Nobody works for free. You must create a win-win arrangement. Rule 3. Meet with your mastermind group at least twice a week, and more often if possible, until you have jointly perfected the necessary plan. Rule 4. Maintain perfect harmony with every member of the group. The moment harmony is lost, the mastermind is destroyed. Hill is extremely firm on this point. One toxic person, one conflict left unresolved, one ego clash, and the entire alliance crumbles. Hill then shifts to something unexpected. He starts talking about leadership. He says if your plan involves leading other people, which most wealth-building plans do, then you must understand what makes a great leader versus a failed leader. He lists the 11 major attributes of leadership: unwavering courage based on self-knowledge, self-control in all situations, a keen sense of justice, definiteness of decision, no wavering, no hesitating, definiteness of plans, always working from a clear blueprint, the habit of doing more than what you're paid for, a pleasing personality, no one follows a bitter leader, sympathy and understanding for others, mastery of detail, willingness to assume full responsibility, and cooperation, the ability to work with others, not above them. Then Hill lists the 10 major causes of failure in leadership, and one of them hits hard. He says one of the biggest reasons leaders fail is their emphasis on the authority of leadership instead of the emphasis on the willingness to serve. In simple words, bad leaders demand respect. Great leaders earn it by serving their team. Hill says, look at any failed business, and you will find a leader who is more focused on their own title and power than on creating value for the people around them. Then Hill addresses something that surprises most readers. He talks about why most people never get rich by working for someone else. He doesn't say employment is bad, but he says you need to understand that when you work for someone else, you are selling your specialized knowledge in exchange for a fixed salary, and that fixed salary will almost always be less than what your knowledge is truly worth. Hill says if you want to build real wealth, you eventually need to create your own organized plan, your own business, your own venture, your own system, where the value you create flows back to you, not to someone else. But whether you're building your own business or climbing the ladder in someone else's organization, the principle remains the same. You need an organized plan. You need the right people around you. You need to be willing to scrap a bad plan and replace it with a better one immediately. And you must never, ever quit just because your first plan failed. The sixth principle is organized planning. Desire tells you what you want. Faith makes you believe you can get it. Imagination shows you how. But organized planning is the bridge that turns your invisible idea into visible reality. Without a plan, your dream is just a fantasy. With an organized plan and a mastermind alliance, your dream becomes a scheduled event. Chapter 7, Decision, the Mastery of Procrastination. The seventh principle is decision, and Napoleon Hill says this single chapter might be the most important in the entire book. After studying over 500 of the most successful people in America for 20 years, Hill discovered one trait that every single one of them shared. They made decisions fast and changed them slowly. And after studying thousands of people who had failed financially, he found the exact opposite pattern. They made decisions slowly and changed them fast. Hill says procrastination, the opposite of decision, is the number one enemy of wealth. It kills more dreams than failure ever could, because at least failure means you tried something. Procrastination means you never even started. Think about how many times you've said something like this: I'll start that business next month. I'll invest when the market settles down. I'll read that book when I have more time. I'll change my life after the holidays. Hill says every time you say those words, you are making a decision. You are deciding to remain exactly where you are. You are deciding to stay broke. You are deciding to let another day, another week, another year pass without taking action. And he says the tragedy is that most people don't even realize they're making that decision. They think they're being cautious. They think they're being smart. They think they're waiting for the right moment. Hill says the right moment doesn't exist. It never has, and it never will. The right moment is the moment you decide. And he tells one of the most powerful stories in the entire book to prove this point. He goes back to the signing of the Declaration of Independence. He describes the scene in vivid detail. 56 men gathered in a room. They were about to sign a document that declared the American colonies free from British rule. Every single one of them knew that by putting their name on that paper, they were signing their own death warrant. If the revolution failed, the British would hunt them down and hang them for treason. There was no guarantee of success. The British Army was the most powerful military force on Earth. The colonies had no real army, no navy, no money, no weapons. By every logical measure, they were going to lose. And yet, one by one, they stepped forward and signed. Hill says that was a decision, a real decision, not a maybe, not a let me think about it, not a I'll do it when the time is right. They decided. And that single decision changed the course of human history. Hill says every wealthy person he studied had a moment like this. A moment where they made a firm, definite, irreversible decision. A moment where they burned the boats, where they cut off every possibility of retreat and committed fully to their path. And Hill makes a critical distinction that most people miss. He says there is a difference between a real decision and a wish disguised as a decision. Most people say things like, I've decided to get rich, but then they do nothing different. They go to the same job. They watch the same television shows. They hang out with the same people. They keep the same habits. Nothing in their life actually changes. Hill says that is not a decision. That is a wish wearing a mask. A real decision changes your behavior immediately. The moment you truly decide something, your actions shift. Your priorities shift. Your schedule shifts. The things you tolerate shift. The people you spend time with shift. Everything shifts because a real decision rewires your entire operating system. And Hill gives another critical piece of advice about decisions. He says, once you make a decision, keep your mouth shut about it. Hill says most people make a decision and then immediately go tell everyone about it. They tell their friends, they tell their family, they tell their coworkers. And what happens? Those people start giving opinions. They start planting doubt. They start saying things like, are you sure about that? That sounds risky. What if it doesn't work? I knew someone who tried that and failed. Hill says every opinion that enters your mind after you've made a decision is a potential poison that can weaken your resolve. The more people you tell, the more doubt you invite. The more doubt you invite, the weaker your decision becomes. And eventually, you change your mind, not because you were wrong, but because you let other people's fears infect your thinking. Hill says the most successful people he studied were quiet about their decisions. They didn't announce their plans to the world. They didn't seek approval. They didn't need validation. They decided, they acted, and they let the results speak for themselves. He says take counsel with yourself. Think for yourself. Make your own decisions, and once you've made them, move forward with speed and conviction. Hill also connects this principle back to desire. He says the reason most people can't make fast decisions is that they don't have a burning desire. When you want something badly enough, when your desire is so intense that it keeps you up at night, decisions become easy. You don't deliberate for weeks, you don't make pro and con lists, you don't ask 20 people for their opinion, you just decide and move. Indecision is a symptom of weak desire. Strong desire produces instant decision. And Hill adds one final warning. He says the world has a habit of making room for the person whose words and actions show that they know where they are going. If you are indecisive, the world will ignore you. Opportunities will pass you by. People will not take you seriously. But the moment you demonstrate that you have made a firm decision and you are moving toward it with absolute certainty, the world steps aside and lets you through. Doors open, people help, resources appear, obstacles shrink. Not because of magic, but because decisiveness commands respect, attracts allies, and creates momentum. The seventh principle is decision. Make them fast, change them slow, keep them quiet. And once you've decided, never look back. The people who built fortunes didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They didn't wait for someone to tell them they were ready. They decided. And that decision changed everything. Chapter 8. Persistence. The sustained effort necessary to induce faith. The eighth principle is persistence. And Napoleon Hill says this is the one principle that separates those who make it from those who almost made it. Hill says willpower and desire, when properly combined, make an irresistible pair. Most people give up at the first sign of difficulty. Some give up at the second or third. But the wealthy people Hill studied had something different inside them. They simply refused to quit. And Hill discovered something fascinating. Persistence is not a trait you're born with. It is a habit you develop. Just like you can train yourself to wake up early or exercise daily, you can train yourself to never quit. He lists 4 simple steps to develop persistence. First, a definite purpose backed by a burning desire. You can't persist towards something you don't care about deeply. Second, a definite plan expressed in continuous action. You need to be doing something every single day toward your goal. Action kills doubt. Third, a mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences. This includes negative friends, negative family, negative news. Guard your mind like your life depends on it, because your financial life does. Fourth, a friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage you to follow through with both your plan and your purpose. Hill says, lack of persistence is one of the major causes of failure. And the most incredible part is that it's a weakness that every single person can overcome. It doesn't require talent, it doesn't require money, it doesn't require connections, it just requires the decision to keep going when everything inside you wants to stop. Hill says the people who accumulated the greatest fortunes in America were not the smartest or the most talented. They were simply the ones who refused to quit 3 feet from gold. Persistence is the direct application of all the other principles combined. Without it, nothing else matters. Chapter 9. Power of the Master Mind. The driving force. The 9th principle is the mastermind, and Napoleon Hill says this might be the single greatest secret behind every massive fortune in history. Hill defines the mastermind as the coordination of knowledge and effort between 2 or more people who work toward a definite purpose in a spirit of harmony. Read that carefully. 2 key words, definite purpose and harmony. Both must be present or the mastermind doesn't work. Hill says something remarkable happens when 2 or more minds come together in harmony. A third invisible mind is created, a collective intelligence that is far more powerful than any individual mind working alone. Ideas flow faster, solutions appear that no single person could have found on their own. Energy multiplies, confidence grows, blind spots disappear. And Hill proves this with the most powerful example he could find: Andrew Carnegie himself. Carnegie built one of the greatest fortunes in human history, but he openly admitted that he personally knew very little about the technical side of steel manufacturing. What he did know was how to assemble and maintain a mastermind group of approximately 50 people, 50 specialists, each brilliant in their own area, all working in harmony toward a shared vision. Carnegie said his entire fortune could be traced directly to the power generated by that group, not his own intelligence, not his own talent, the collective power of aligned minds. Hill says, look at any wealthy person in history, and you will find a mastermind group behind them. Henry Ford had his inner circle. Thomas Edison had his laboratory team. Every president had a cabinet of advisors. No one builds wealth alone. It is impossible. The person who tries to do everything by themselves will always be outperformed by a coordinated group of people working in harmony. Hill says your first step after reading this book should be to identify the people you need in your mastermind alliance, people whose skills complement yours, people who share your hunger, people who will hold you accountable when your persistence weakens. Find your mastermind group and your earning potential multiplies overnight. Try to do it all alone and you will struggle for the rest of your life. Chapter 10: The Mystery of Sex Transmutation. The 10th principle is sex transmutation, and this is the most misunderstood chapter in the entire book. Hill is not talking about what most people think he's talking about. He's talking about energy, pure raw human energy. Hill says the desire for sexual expression is the most powerful of all human emotions. It is the strongest drive the human body has, stronger than hunger, stronger than fear, stronger than the desire for money. And Hill says most people waste this energy completely. They let it scatter in every direction without purpose or focus. But the wealthiest and most accomplished people in history learn to do something different. They learn to take that powerful energy and redirect it, transmute it, into creative imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, and an overwhelming drive to achieve their goals. Hill says when this energy is redirected toward your definite purpose, you become almost unstoppable. Your mind operates at a higher frequency, ideas come faster, your charisma increases, your ability to influence others skyrockets, your work output doubles and triples. And Hill made an interesting observation during his 20 years of research. He found that almost every great leader and every massively successful person he studied hit their peak performance after the age of 40. He says this is because it takes most men and women several decades to learn how to channel this energy productively rather than wasting it. Hill says the people who achieve greatness before 40 are almost always the ones who discovered the secret of transmutation early. They learn to take the most powerful force in the human body and aim it like a laser at their definite chief aim. This isn't about suppression. Hill is very clear about that. It's about redirection. It's about taking energy that already exists inside you and choosing to channel it into building your fortune instead of scattering it aimlessly. Master this one principle, and you unlock a level of focus, creativity, and drive that most people will never experience in their entire lives. Chapter 11: The Subconscious Mind, the Connecting Link. The 11th principle is the subconscious mind, and Napoleon Hill says this is the connecting link between the finite mind of man and infinite intelligence. Hill says your subconscious mind works around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never sleeps, it never takes a break. It is constantly processing, organizing, and acting on the information you feed it. And here's the most important thing Hill says about the subconscious mind. You cannot entirely control it, but you can voluntarily plant any plan, thought, or purpose you wish to translate into reality. This is the key. You get to choose what goes in. And whatever goes in most frequently and with the most emotion is what the subconscious accepts as its operating instructions. Hill says there are 7 major positive emotions and 7 major negative emotions that influence the subconscious mind. The 7 positive emotions are desire, faith, love, sex, enthusiasm, romance, and hope. These are the emotions that open the door to infinite intelligence and creative breakthroughs. The 7 negative emotions are fear, jealousy, hatred, revenge, greed, superstition, and anger. These are the emotions that poison the subconscious and block every path to wealth. And here's the critical part. Hill says positive and negative emotions cannot occupy the mind at the same time. One will always dominate. And whichever one dominates will control your subconscious mind and therefore control your results. Hill says you must make a deliberate habit of feeding your subconscious with positive emotions, not occasionally, not when you feel like it, every single day, through your autosuggestion practice, through your written statement, through the people you surround yourself with, through the content you consume. He says most people let their subconscious run on autopilot, absorbing whatever random thoughts, fears, and negativity happen to drift in. And then they wonder why their life is a mess. The wealthy people Hill studied took control. They guarded the entrance to their subconscious mind like a fortress. They deliberately flooded it with desire, faith, and enthusiasm, and their subconscious responded by delivering ideas, plans, and opportunities that transformed their financial reality. Your subconscious mind is either your greatest ally or your worst enemy. The difference depends entirely on what you choose to feed it. Chapters 12 and 13. The Brain plus the Sixth Sense. The 12th principle is the brain and the 13th principle is the sixth sense. Napoleon Hill saved these two for last because he says they are the most abstract and the most powerful of all 13 principles. Hill describes the human brain as a broadcasting and receiving station for thought. Just like a radio picks up signals from the air, your brain picks up thoughts and ideas from the minds of other people and from what Hill calls infinite intelligence. And this is where the mastermind principle connects to something deeper. Hill says when two or more minds come together in harmony, they tune into the same frequency. They start picking up ideas and solutions that none of them could have accessed individually. It's like two radio towers combining their signals to reach a station that neither one could reach alone. Hill says the most successful people he studied experienced this regularly. In their mastermind meetings, ideas would appear seemingly out of nowhere. Solutions to impossible problems would suddenly become obvious. Plans would form in minutes that would have taken months working alone. And Hill says this is not magic. It is the natural function of the human brain operating at its highest potential when surrounded by other minds vibrating in harmony. Now, the 13th and final principle, the sixth sense. Hill calls this the apex of the entire Think and Grow Rich philosophy. He says the sixth sense is that portion of the subconscious mind which has been referred to as creative imagination. It is the receiving set through which ideas, plans, and thoughts flash into the mind. Hill says the sixth sense defies description. It cannot be taught. It cannot be purchased. It can only be developed through the mastery of the other 12 principles. He says when you have practiced desire, faith, autosuggestion, specialized knowledge, imagination, organized planning, decision, persistence, the mastermind, sex transmutation, and subconscious mind control, when all 12 of these principles are working together in harmony, the sixth sense activates naturally. It shows up as a gut feeling that tells you to take a specific action. It shows up as a flash of insight that solves a problem you've been struggling with for months. It shows up as a warning that saves you from a terrible decision. It shows up as a sudden idea that leads to your biggest breakthrough. Hill says every great fortune, every great invention, every great achievement in human history can be traced back to a moment when someone's sixth sense whispered something to them, and they had the courage to listen. He says most people experience these flashes of insight occasionally, but they ignore them. They dismiss them as random thoughts. They let logic talk them out of it. The wealthy people Hill studied learned to trust their sixth sense completely. They treated it as their most valuable advisor, and it never let them down. The sixth sense is not something you chase. It is something that finds you, but only after you have committed fully to mastering the other 12 principles. Closing, key takeaways plus final CTA. And there it is, the complete 13-step formula that Napoleon Hill spent 20 years of his life uncovering. The same formula that was handed to him by Andrew Carnegie, the richest man in the world, and confirmed by over 500 of the most successful people in American history. Let's bring it all together one final time. Principle 1. Desire. Not a wish, not a hope, a burning, obsessive, all-consuming desire with a specific dollar amount, a specific deadline, and a specific plan. Burn the boats. Eliminate every possibility of retreat. Principle 2. Faith. A deliberately constructed belief that you will achieve your goal. Not blind hope. Program certainty built through daily repetition. Principle 3. Autosuggestion. The daily practice of feeding your subconscious mind a specific thought mixed with powerful emotion until it accepts that thought as reality. Principle 4. Specialized knowledge, not general knowledge. Deep, focused, practical expertise in one specific area that the marketplace values and is willing to pay for. Principle 5. Imagination. The workshop of the mind where all plans for wealth are first created. Use synthetic imagination to rearrange existing ideas into profitable combinations. Principle 6. Organized planning. A concrete, practical plan backed by a mastermind alliance. And when the first plan fails, replace it immediately with a better one. Never quit because one plan didn't work. Principle 7. Decision. Make them fast. Change them slow. Keep them quiet. And never let other people's fears infect your thinking. Principle 8. Persistence. The sustained effort that separates those who make it from those who almost made it. Guard your mind. Follow your plan. Refuse to quit 3 feet from gold. Principle 9. The mastermind. No one builds wealth alone. Find your group, align your purpose, work in harmony, and watch a third invisible mind emerge that is more powerful than any individual. Principle 10. Sex transmutation. Take the most powerful energy in the human body and redirect it toward your definite purpose. Channel it, focus it, aim it like a laser at your goals. Principle 11. The subconscious mind. Feed it positive emotions daily, guard it from negativity, plant your desires deep inside it, and let it work 24 hours a day to make them real. Principle 12. The brain. A broadcasting and receiving station for thought. Tune it to the right frequency through your mastermind alliance and watch ideas flow from infinite intelligence. Principle 13. The sixth sense. The apex of the entire philosophy. The gut feeling, the flash of insight, the inner voice that guides you toward your fortune, but only after you have mastered the other 12 principles. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years interviewing the most successful people who ever lived. He condensed everything they taught him into these 13 principles, and he published it during the worst economic disaster in American history, the Great Depression, because he believed that wealth is not created by circumstances. Wealth is created by the mind. Your circumstances don't determine your future. Your thinking does. And if there is one line from this entire book that you should carry with you for the rest of your life, it is this: whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. That is the entire philosophy of Think and Grow Rich in one sentence. Conceive it in your imagination, believe it through faith and autosuggestion, and achieve it through organized planning, decision, persistence, and the mastermind. The formula has been given to you, every single principle. Nothing held back, nothing left out. Now the only question that matters is, what are you going to do with it? If this summary gave you value, smash that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps us reach more people who need to hear this. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. We drop full book summaries every Tuesday and Friday on the world's best books on money, business, mindset, and philosophy. And if you want to read the full book yourself, and trust me, this is a book you need to own, I've put the link to Think and Grow Rich right in the description below. Next up on the paper trail, we're breaking down The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, the book that Warren Buffett calls the best investing book ever written. You don't want to miss that one. Until then, keep reading, keep learning, keep building. This is the paper trail, and your paper trail starts now.